When I saw my own wedding photo on his phone, I forgot how to breathe. Not because I didn't remember the man in the picture, because I did. I remembered the way his mouth felt on mine in a dark hallway filled with violin music and lies. I remembered the weight of his hand on my lower back, the way he looked at me as if the whole room had blurred except for my face. I remembered his voice in my ear, rough and low, promising me things no sane woman should have believed after midnight. What I could not remember was marrying him. Yet there it was, a photograph, me in a white dress, him in a black suit, my hand in his mouth against my temple, a ring on my finger that I had never seen in waking memory. And his thumb was resting on the screen the way men touch a bruise they still can't stop pressing. I stood in the doorway of his office, half hidden by shadow, and understood three things at once. First, the stranger I had agreed to destroy was not a stranger. Second, someone had stolen a year of my life. And third, my body still knew him before my mind ever had the chance to catch up. He looked up. Our eyes met. And just like that, the room changed temperature. "Who let you in?" he asked. His voice did something violent to me, not externally. Not in a way anyone else could have seen. But inside me, low under the ribs, where memory and desire keep each other alive long after reason begs them to die. I stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind me. "No one had to let me in," I said. "Your assistant thinks I'm expected." His gaze dropped once, almost lazily, to the neckline of my dress before returning to my face. That tiny movement should not have affected me. It did. Everything about him looked built to affect women and punish them for noticing. He sat behind a black desk that looked too severe to belong anywhere human. The city glittered behind him through glass walls. Midnight painted his face in shadow and reflected gold. He wore no tie, the top button of his shirt undone, the kind of expensive carelessness that made wealth look intimate. He was beautiful. I hated him instantly for that. "Sit," he said. "I prefer standing." "Of course you do." I didn't move, neither did he. The silence stretched between us, sleek and dangerous. Then he picked up his phone, looked at the screen, and turned it face down on the desk. A small motion, almost nothing. Still, my pulse spiked. "You were looking at a photo of me," I said. His expression did not change. "Were you spying?" "No. I was walking in to seduce you." That got his attention. Not much, just a flicker. But for a man like him, a flicker was practically an earthquake. I crossed my legs slowly and sat in the chair opposite him. His eyes followed the movement, then hardened, as if he disliked himself for that moment of honesty. Good. I wanted him honest. I wanted him open and vulnerable and ruined. That was the point of this. 3 weeks earlier, my older brother had placed a thin folder in front of me and said, "I need you to do something ugly." He was bleeding through his cuff at the time, not metaphorically, actually bleeding. A split lip, bruised jaw, shirt half open, one shoe missing. The kind of mess a man becomes after discovering his business partner has sold him to the wolves. "Say no more," I told him. He smiled without humor. "You should at least hear the offer before you decide what kind of sister you're about to be." My brother, Adrian, was the only person I had left in the world who still spoke to me as if I were salvageable. Everyone else looked at me and saw a pretty disaster with expensive lipstick. He looked at me and saw a woman who had been surviving too sharply for too long. "The man who buried the deal is named Lucian Vale," he said. "If I can get proof he orchestrated the transfer, I can save the company." I laughed once. "And where exactly do you expect me to find proof?" In his guilty eyes, in his bed, if necessary. That silenced me. Adrian leaned back slowly, exhaustion all over his face. "I'm not proud of this. You should be dead before you are proud of it." "I might be if this continues." The room went still. That was my brother's talent. He never shouted. He just laid truth on the table and let it cut. "What are you asking me?" I said. He held my gaze. "Lucian likes beautiful women. He likes mystery. He likes challenge more than affection. Get close to him. Find out what he's hiding." I stood so fast my chair scraped. "You want me to sleep with a man so you can save a contract?" I want you to survive the next 6 months with a roof over your head and enough money to keep this family from drowning. Family. As if there were more than the two of us left. Our father was dead. Our mother had spent the last decade choosing men over sanity and then dying halfway through one of her apologies. What remained was Adrian, his failing company, and me, Evelyn Cross, 28, professional event designer by day, elegant catastrophe by nature. "Why me?" I whispered. He looked so tired then. "Because he'll notice you." The cruelty of that truth sat between us for a long time. I should have said no. I should have walked out, poured the folder into the sink, and let our problems remain ordinary-sized. Instead, I opened it. Lucian Vale, 33, founder. Investor, private strategist, ruthless negotiator. Photographed beside ministers, models, and men whose smiles never reached their eyes. There were 6 pages on his business history. There was 1 page on his personal life. Unmarried, no children, no public scandals. Rumored relationships, none confirmed, prefers privacy. The photo paperclip to the top was the first time I saw him. Black suit, white shirt. Dark hair swept back from a face that looked too composed to belong to someone who destroyed people professionally. A mouth made for expensive lies. Eyes that seemed to know something about pain and had decided to make it useful. I stared too long. Adrian noticed, of course. "Don't," he said. "Don't what?" Confuse beautiful with safe. I looked down at the file again, too late. Now, 3 weeks later, I was sitting in Lucian Vale's office wearing a dress chosen to create exactly the kind of distraction my brother had paid for. It was dark blue, almost black, fitted enough to suggest confidence and dangerous enough to suggest motive. My hair was down. My lipstick was the color women choose when they want to look like they regret nothing. I had expected him to be arrogant. I had expected him to be easy. What I had not expected was that photograph. My photograph, our photograph. "Let's stop pretending," I said. His eyes narrowed very slightly. "That would be refreshing. You know who I am." "Yes, and I know you know." "Yes," I wet my lips. "Then explain the picture." For the first time, something truly human moved across his face. Not fear, not exactly, it was closer to grief. "You don't remember," he said. It was not a question. A shiver moved across my skin. "I'm asking you not to insult me." He stood. I hated how much taller he felt now. There are men whose height is just measurement, and there are men whose height becomes atmosphere. Lucian belonged to the second category. He moved around the desk with infuriating calm, then stopped in front of the bar cart without pouring himself anything. "The last time I saw you," he said, "you were bleeding from your wrist, screaming my name and telling me not to let them take you." My mouth went dry. "What?" He turned. The city lit one side of his face. The other remained in shadow. "You were my wife," he said, "for 11 months and 6 days. I laughed. It was a horrible sound. Because no one says something like that unless they either want you insane or already think you are. "That's impossible." Clearly not. I would remember getting married. His jaw flexed once. "You remember very little from the accident." Accident. The word slammed into me with no immediate meaning, then rippled outward. A flash. Rain, headlights, my hand reaching across a dashboard. Someone shouting, then nothing. I pressed my fingertips into my temple. Lucian took 1 step toward me. I stepped back just as quickly. "Don't!" He stopped. That should have reassured me. It didn't. It only made him more dangerous. A dangerous man who ignores boundaries is obvious. A dangerous man who respects them looks safe enough to follow. "What accident?" I asked. His eyes searched my face as if he were looking for another woman still trapped beneath mine. "The one that erased me." The room blurred, then sharpened. I sat down because my knees had begun to negotiate with gravity without my permission. "Start over," I said, "and don't lie to me." His mouth gave the ghost of a smile. "That's an ambitious request from a woman who walked into my office intending to manipulate me." Heat rushed into my cheeks. "You knew. I knew the second you introduced yourself at the gala last week." My head jerked up. "At the gala?" "Yes." I remembered that night in shattered pieces, a ballroom, red wine, gold chandeliers. him across the room looking at me with enough concentrated stillness to make every other man feel decorative. I had approached him because Adrian needed me to. Lucian had looked at me as if I had returned from the dead and chosen heels for the occasion. I had mistaken that expression for desire. Maybe it had been desire, maybe that was what made this worse. "You let me flirt with you," I said. His eyes dropped briefly to my mouth. "You were very convincing." Anger gave me back my spine. "You should have told me. You should have remembered." The cruelty of it stunned us both. He knew instantly he'd gone too far. I saw it in the way his hand tightened on the back of the chair beside him. But he didn't take it back. I almost respected him for that. Almost. "Get out," I said. He blinked. "What?" "You heard me." "Whatever this game is, I'm done." He came toward me then, fast enough that my breath caught but stopped before he touched me. "There is no game." "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Because the last thing your brother asked me to do was stay away from you." That landed harder than anything else. My brother, of course, always another hidden blade. "What did Adrian tell you?" Lucian looked down at me. "That after the accident, the doctors said memory shocks had to happen naturally. No pressure, no forced exposure, no emotional stress." A pause. "He said if I loved you, I would leave you alone." I stared. Loved. The word felt obscene in his mouth, not because it didn't fit, because some traitorous part of me thought it did. "What did you say?" I asked. "That I don't take instruction well." I should have laughed. Instead, I asked, "Did you love me?" His face changed in a way I will never forget. You can always tell when a person has rehearsed their indifference for too long and suddenly finds the role impossible to maintain. His voice, when it came, was lower than before. Still the cruelest question in the room. Something in my chest tightened painfully. He looked away first. That made it worse. I stood, needing distance from the gravity gathering around us. My heel caught the edge of the rug. He reached out instinctively. His hand closed around my wrist. Everything stopped. His fingers were warm, familiar, too familiar. And suddenly another flash came, not from memory exactly, but from the body. His hand pinning both of mine gently above my head against cool marble, my back against a wall, my mouth opening on his name with more hunger than protest. His voice in my ear, "Tell me no and I stop. Tell me yes and I ruin you properly." I snatched my wrist back as if burned. He saw the recognition. His eyes darkened. "What did you remember?" I shook my head violently. "Nothing, Evelyn. Do not say my name like that." "Like what?" "Like you already know what I sound like when I break." Silence, deep, electric, awful. Then he said very quietly, "I do." I looked at him. He was no longer just beautiful, he was intimate. And intimacy is far more dangerous than beauty because beauty can be admired from a distance. Intimacy enters the blood. I grabbed my bag and walked toward the door. He did not stop me. But just before I opened it, he said, "You came here for something." I froze. He continued, "So either tell me what your brother wants or go home and decide whether you hate me more than you want the truth." I turned back slowly. He had me there. That was infuriating. "What makes you think I came here for Adrian?" 1, because he's desperate. 2, because he's loyal. 3, because you wear self-sacrifice like perfume when it's about him. He tilted his head. "You always did." I should have denied it. Instead, I asked, "And if I tell you?" "Then I decide whether to help you." "Why would you help me?" "Because despite popular opinion, I prefer your brother alive." That startled me. He saw it. "Sit down," he said again. This time I did. I told him almost everything, not the whole of Adrian's plan. Not the humiliating parts about bait and seduction, but enough. The buried deal, the missing transfer trail, the silent investors, the threat of collapse. Lucian listened without interrupting, one hand in his pocket, the other resting on the bar cart like he was trying not to become too interested in any of this. When I finished, he was silent for several long seconds. Then he said, "Your brother was right. That alone makes me suspicious. You should be suspicious more often. It might have saved us both." I flinched. He noticed. Good, let him notice. "What was he right about?" I asked. Lucian met my eyes. "Someone is trying to bury him." It just wasn't me. The floor dropped out from under my thoughts. Then who? He shook his head once. I don't know yet. I laughed bitterly. How convenient. I understand why you'd think that. Do you? Yes, his expression stayed calm. But if I wanted your brother dead professionally, he'd be dead professionally. I don't work in half measures. There was something terrifying about the confidence in that sentence. Something worse than arrogance. Truth. I studied him, searching for the angle. All I found was exhaustion under discipline. Why would someone frame you? I asked. His mouth hardened. Because I'm easy to hate. That's not an answer. It's the most honest one. He walked back behind the desk, opened a drawer, and took out a folder. When he set it in front of me, I saw my name written across the tab in his handwriting. My stomach twisted. What is this? Everything I kept after you forgot me. I didn't touch it. He noticed that too. It won't bite. That depends what's inside. His gaze didn't waver. Photographs, messages. Medical papers, the marriage certificate. A pause. A letter I never sent. I looked up at him slowly. A letter? I wrote it after your brother told me to disappear. He leaned against the desk. I didn't send it because I was told it might force memory in the wrong way or hurt you. Or both. The idea of him writing to me in silence did something unbearable to the room. I hated it. I hated how easily my imagination betrayed me. Him alone at some impossible hour, sleeves rolled, jaw tight, writing words he could not deliver to the woman who no longer remembered choosing him. That image should not have made me ache. It did. What did it say? His eyes stayed on mine. You'll have to earn that. I laughed softly, almost in disbelief. You are unbelievable, so you keep saying. I picked up the folder at last. My fingers shook. Inside was a photograph first. Not the wedding one. A smaller, messier thing. Me sitting cross-legged on the kitchen counter in one of his shirts, eating peaches straight over the sink, laughing at whoever had taken the picture. He had. I knew it without being told. Not because I remembered the moment. Because of the way I was looking toward the camera. Open, undone, in love. The woman in the photo did not look like me. She looked easier to ruin. What kind of marriage did we have? I whispered. The question seemed to hit him physically. He looked out at the city before answering. The kind that began badly. His jaw tightened once, and became real anyway. My throat closed. That answer contained too much. I put the photo down before I could bleed into it. Why did we marry? He laughed once, but there was no humor in it. You blackmailed me. I looked up so fast my neck hurt. Excuse me, you heard me. That is absurd. Is it? He pushed away from the desk and came closer. You found out something about me that could have damaged a board decision. You walked into my office wearing white after Labor Day and told me you would stay quiet if I had dinner with you. I stared. The image arrived in fragments. A younger me, a white suit, his office, a glass of whiskey, his face annoyed and fascinated in equal measure. No full memory, just sensation. Like hearing music through a wall. You're lying, I whispered. His eyes gleamed. God, I wish I were. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Adrian, of course. I turned away to answer it, suddenly needing the familiar problem. Tell me you're alive, he said immediately. That depends how you define alive. That bad, worse, silence. Then, you saw him. Yes, and I looked across the room at Lucian, who had enough decency not to pretend not to hear. And apparently I married him. The silence on the line deepened until it became almost religious. Finally, Adrian said, What? Would now be a bad time to mention I nearly seduced my own husband on your behalf. Across the room, Lucian's mouth twitched. I hated both men for making me feel absurd when I was close to fainting. Adrian exhaled sharply. Leave! I should. Yes, I didn't move. Lucian noticed that too. Evelyn! That one word from Adrian was enough to peel back all my defenses. My brother only used my full name when fear got too close to his voice. What? I didn't tell you because I thought you were safer without him. I swallowed. That doesn't answer much. It answers enough. No, it didn't. Not even close. But I suddenly understood something awful. Whatever had existed between Lucian and me had not merely been passionate or foolish or secret. It had been serious enough for my brother to fear it. Serious enough to bury. I ended the call and stood with the phone in my hand for a long moment. Lucian said nothing. That silence felt like mercy. Then he ruined it by asking, "Are you leaving?" I looked at the folder, the photographs. The evidence of a woman I had once been and a man I had once chosen so completely that legal paperwork had followed. "No," I said. His expression didn't change, but something in the room eased anyway. "No, no," I set my bag down. "I'm done being protected by half-truths. If there's a version of my life I lost, I want it back, even the ugly parts." His voice softened. "You may regret that." I met his gaze. "I already regret living without it." For the first time all night, he looked at me with something almost unguarded. That was somehow more intimate than the memory flash in the marble hallway. He nodded toward the folder. "Then start there." I read until dawn, photographs, emails, hotel receipts, voice transcripts from appointments. One grainy shot of us leaving a courthouse with no guests, no flowers, just my hand in his and my head tipped back laughing at something outside the frame. I hated how beautiful we looked. I hated that beauty could exist without my consent now. At 4 a.m, I found the letter. It was folded once, no envelope, just his handwriting across thick cream paper. "Evelyn, you are asleep in a hospital bed 2 floors below me, and your brother has just informed me that if I love you, I will disappear." I should hate him for that. Instead, I understand. When you wake up, they say you may remember nothing, or everything, or only the parts of your life that hurt least. The doctor used the word fragmented. I wanted to hit him for making the ruin of you sound elegant. You always accused me of wanting control. Here is the truth I never said correctly. Control was easier than devotion because devotion hands another person the knife and asks them to be kind. Then you arrived. You blackmailed me with bad coffee and impossible eyes. You argued with me in public, kissed me in private, and married me in a courthouse because you said if I was going to ruin your peace, I should at least do it legally. You were the worst thing that ever made my life better. If I stay, I may confuse your healing with my hunger to be remembered. If I leave, I betray every promise I made to you when you still knew my name in the dark. I don't know which sin is greater, but if you ever remember me, remember this: you were loved without caution. Lucian, I read it twice. Then I cried in a chair that cost more than my first car. Not because it was romantic, because it sounded true, and truth is devastating when it arrives late. At 7, I looked up to find Lucian still there. He had not slept. He had loosened his shirt sleeves and abandoned his jacket and was standing by the windows with a coffee in one hand like a man who had no right looking that composed after detonating someone's identity. "You stayed," I said. "Yes." "You watched me read all night?" "No." He took a sip. I listened. I should have been embarrassed. Instead, I asked, "Why did Adrian hate you so much?" His gaze moved to me. "Because when the accident happened, he got to be the one you remembered." That answer took the room cleanly apart. I stood so fast the letter fell from my lap. "That's not fair." "No," he said. "It wasn't." I crossed the room before I fully understood why. Anger, grief, confusion, they all borrowed my body at once. "You should have fought harder." The words came out broken. His face changed. "I know. You should have told me. I know. You should have dragged me back to every place, every room, every—" I stopped. Because I was standing too close. Because he smelled like coffee and cedar and sleepless self-control. Because some shameful, starving part of me wanted him to kiss me right then, not as proof, not as strategy, but as recognition. He looked down at my mouth. My breath stalled. "Evelyn," he said, and it sounded like both warning and surrender. I hated that my answer was immediate. "Yes," his hand came up slowly, giving me every chance to move. It stopped just beside my face, not touching, waiting. "Tell me what you want." There are moments when a woman can hear every version of her life branching in front of her. This was one of them. One path was reason, distance, questions, patience. The other was reckless and hungry and deeply, gloriously human. "I want," I said softly, "to know whether my body remembers the truth before my mind does." That broke the last of his restraint. He kissed me like a man who had spent a year obeying ghosts and had just been told he was allowed to become flesh again. And God, it was not soft, not cruel either, just starved. His hand slid behind my neck, mine caught the front of his shirt, and something inside me opened like a locked room taking air for the first time in years. No explicit memory came, no clear image, but sensation flooded through me. His mouth at my throat in candlelight. His laugh against my bare shoulder, my hands in his hair, the feel of his ring knocking lightly against a glass while we argued in a kitchen. My own voice, breathless and wicked, saying, "If you keep looking at me like that, I'll forget why I'm angry." I broke the kiss with a gasp. The world tilted. He steadied me instantly. "What did you remember?" I looked at him, stunned. "Myself," I whispered. For the first time since I met him, Lucian Vale looked wrecked. And God help me, it made him even more beautiful. He touched my face as if he no longer trusted himself to do anything more. "I should stop." "You won't." "No." The honesty of that hit me low and hard. My pulse had not slowed. His hadn't either. I could feel it in the hand still braced around my waist, the one he had not yet realized he was keeping there like he feared I might disappear again if he let go. "What else did I forget?" I asked. He gave a humorless laugh. "How much time do you have?" "All of it." His expression shifted. Then he did something completely unfair. He smiled, not the controlled version, not the public one. A smaller, more private smile that changed his whole face and made me understand instantly how I could have married him in the first place. No woman survives that smile with her caution intact. "You hated my apartment," he said. I blinked. "What? You called it a museum designed by a man who doesn't believe in joy." I stared at him. That sounded exactly like something I would say to a man I wanted to provoke into kissing me against a wall. His smile deepened. "You reorganized my kitchen out of spite." I did not. "You alphabetized my spices because you were angry." I pressed a hand to my mouth. "On our honeymoon," he continued, and now his voice was lower, rougher, as if the memory itself had weight. "You stole my shirt, locked me out on the balcony in the rain, and told me if I ever called you difficult again, I'd have to beg my way back inside." Heat climbed my throat. "I sound insufferable." "You were." His eyes held mine. "You were also the only place I ever wanted to be." That should have been too much. It wasn't enough. Because now I needed all of it, every scrap, every hidden wound, every ugly, beautiful thing. "What happened to us before the accident?" I asked. "The real answer." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "You left me for 12 days. I stared. "That's impossible." "Nothing is impossible with you. That was the whole problem." He leaned back against the desk, arms folded. "We got married too quickly. We burned too hot. Then your mother came to you crying over debt, and your brother was drowning in his company, and you decided it was your job to save everyone." The shame hit instantly because even without memory, I knew that woman. I knew her terrible instinct to bleed quietly and call it strength. "You hated that," I said. "I hated that you never asked for help before choosing a sacrifice." I looked away, because yes, that sounded like me too. "You disappeared for 12 days, he said. Then came back with a suitcase, a new haircut, and a lie so elegant I almost admired it. My stomach tightened. "What lie?" "That you didn't love me enough to stay." His eyes lifted to mine again. "That was the first time you broke me." I had no answer for that, no defense. Only grief for a woman I had been and a man she had already wounded before fate did the rest. He crossed the room then, slower this time, giving me plenty of time to pull away. I didn't. "Your brother thinks I'm the danger," he said. "Are you?" "Yes." I appreciated the speed of that answer. Then he added, "But not the one he should be worried about." The room felt very still. "What does that mean?" Instead of answering, he reached into his pocket and handed me a folded document. I took it. There was no dramatic reveal, no music in the background, no cinematic thunder, only paper, expensive and ordinary, carrying the kind of truth that ruins people. I unfolded it. A transfer agreement. 3 signatures, dates from 6 months before my accident, and at the bottom, Adrian's signature. My chest went hollow. "No," Lucian's voice was quiet. I didn't bury his company, Evelyn. He sold half of it himself. I shook my head. No, he was cornered. He took money from the wrong people. Then when the terms turned predatory, he needed a villain bigger than him. I looked up, devastated and furious. You're lying. I'm not. He would never. He would absolutely bleed himself dry to protect you, Lucian cut in. And then he would lie about where the blood went if he thought the truth would make you hate him. That landed because it was too plausible, too cruelly plausible. I sat down hard on the edge of the desk chair. Adrian's bruised face from weeks ago, his shaking hand, his desperate request. The way he avoided specifics every time I asked how bad things really were. Oh God. Lucian crouched in front of me then. The movement shocked me more than anything else had. Men like him did not lower themselves often. Power preferred height. But there he was, looking up at me, one forearm resting loosely on his knee, his expression stripped of everything except exhausted honesty. I am not asking you to choose me over your brother, he said. I am asking you not to let loyalty make you blind. My eyes burned. I don't know what's true anymore. Yes, you do. No, I don't. You do, he said again, softer this time. You know what your body does when something is false. You go cold. You get cruel. You sharpen. You've been doing it since you walked in here. His gaze did not leave mine. You haven't done that with me once since the letter. I hated how well he knew me. I hated more that I believed him. I whispered, if Adrian lied to me. Lucian's face tightened. Then he lied because he was afraid of losing you too. I laughed bitterly through tears. Why does every man in my life keep making decisions for me in the name of love? He took that without flinching. Because some of us loved you badly. The honesty of it undid me. I cried then, not elegantly, not quietly, not in the polished way women do on screens. I cried the way real grief arrives, ugly and hot and furious at being forced into the light. Lucian rose and stepped back, not crowding me, not soothing me too quickly, not offering those cheap, soft phrases men use when they want credit for witnessing pain. He just stayed. That was worse. That was better. When I finally wiped my face and stood, my voice felt scraped raw. I need to hear it from him. Lucian nodded once. Then let's go. Together, his expression hardened slightly. You think I'm letting you walk into a room with a desperate man who's been lying to you and who already once erased me from your life? I should have objected. I didn't have the energy. Adrian was in our old family townhouse, the one we never sold because ghosts are cheaper than closure. The moment I walked in, he knew. Maybe it was the look on my face. Maybe it was Lucian behind me. Maybe guilt just has a smell family learns too well. He stood from the dining table so fast his chair tipped over. Evelyn, did you sign it? Silence. I held up the transfer papers with a shaking hand. Did you? His eyes moved to Lucian, then back to me. Yes. The word shattered something old and weak inside me. I laughed once because the alternative was screaming. So all this time, Adrian scrubbed a hand across his mouth. It wasn't like that. That is exactly what liars say when the truth is standing on the table. His face twisted. I was trying to keep us alive. No, I said. You were trying to keep me loyal. That's not fair. Neither is asking me to sleep with my husband to recover a company you helped sell. The silence that followed was catastrophic. Adrian looked at Lucian as if he wanted to kill him. Lucian looked back with the calm of a man who had already been hated and found it survivable. Then Adrian turned to me again, and I saw it. Shame. Real shame. I never wanted you to find out like this. I laughed again, sharper. How did you want me to find out, after I ruined myself for you? After I humiliated myself in his office, after I let you turn my life into a tool, his voice cracked. I was drowning, and I would have saved you. My own voice broke with it. You should have trusted me enough to let me choose. That hit him. Good. He deserved it. We all did. He sat down slowly, suddenly looking older than I had ever seen him. I thought if you remembered Lucian, you'd go back to him. I stared. What? His eyes filled with the kind of grief men don't know how to survive elegantly. And if you went back to him, you'd leave me alone with the mess I made. There it was, at last, the ugliest truth, not malice, Cowardice. Family-sized cowardice dressed as protection. I looked at my brother, the man I had spent my whole life loving past his flaws, and understood how love can become selfish without ever noticing the moment it crosses the line. "I hate you," I whispered. His face crumpled. "No," I said before he could answer. "That's not true. I hate that I still love you." Then I turned and walked out before he could say another word that would make mercy feel like weakness. I made it only as far as the front steps before my knees gave up. Lucian caught me before the stone did. Of course he did. His hands were firm, controlled, familiar in a way that now hurt less and more at the same time. "I've got you," he said. That nearly finished me, not because it was romantic, because he sounded like a man repeating something he had said before, maybe many times. I looked up at him, wrecked and furious and exhausted. "Tell me something true." His eyes held mine. "You were never hard to love," he said. "Only hard to keep safe from yourself." The sob that tore out of me then felt almost ancient. He pulled me into him without hesitation. I buried my face in his coat and let the last of my pride drown. We stayed like that for a long time, on the front steps of the house where everything went wrong, under a gray afternoon sky that looked too ordinary for the scale of my collapse. When I could breathe again, I said into his chest, "I don't know what happens now." He answered above my hair, voice low and steady. "Now you stop choosing punishment as if it's nobility." I pulled back enough to look at him. "And if I don't know how?" A shadow of that dangerous, private smile touched his mouth. "Then, wife," his thumb brushed the tear tracks from my cheek, "I remind you." That should not have felt the way it did, but it did, not ownership, not dominance, recognition. As if some shattered, hidden part of my life had clicked softly back into place and was waiting to see whether I was brave enough to live inside it again. I touched the front of his coat, right over his heart. "This is still a terrible idea. Yes, you could still ruin me. Yes, and I'm still angry at you for letting me go." His gaze did not waver. "You should be." I inhaled shakily. "Then why do I want you to kiss me again?" That answer came without pause. "Because your memory may be damaged, but your instincts are excellent." I laughed through the remnants of tears. Then he kissed me on the front steps of my childhood home, while the city kept moving and my brother sat somewhere inside learning what it costs to confuse love with control. This kiss was different from the first, less starved, more certain, not because the pain was gone, because the truth was finally in the room. His hand cupped my jaw. Mine found the back of his neck. The world narrowed to warmth, breath, pressure, and the impossible relief of being wanted by the one man I now knew I had chosen even before I could remember why. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "Come home," he said. I smiled weakly. That line should not work on me twice. It isn't a line. No, it wasn't. That was the problem. I looked back once at the house behind me, at the window, at the shape of the life that raised me, at the loyalties that had both protected and distorted me. Then I looked at Lucian. At the man I had blackmailed, married, forgotten, desired, doubted, rediscovered, and I finally said the only answer that sounded like mine. "Okay." We walked down the steps together, not healed, not innocent, not simple, but honest. And sometimes honesty is the most seductive thing left when every fantasy has already failed you.